Accelerated in July but remains well within the Reserve Bank's target bracket. Statistics South Africa data shows consumer price inflation was 3.2% in July, up from 2.2% in June. The main contributors to the uptick were food and non-alcoholic beverages, housing and utilities, and miscellaneous goods and services. Food and non-alcoholic beverages increased by 4.3% year-on-year and contributed 0.7 of a percentage point to the total CPI annual rate. Housing and utilities increased by 3.2% year-on-year and contributed 0.8 of a percentage point. Economists say the uptick is on the back of fuel price increases in the month, and municipal rates and taxes, water and power charges continue to record stable but high rates of inflation in July. Subdued inflation allows the Reserve Bank room to further lower the repo rate to boost the economic activity and try and repair the damage caused by the coronavirus pandemic. But let's stay on the inflation numbers. I'm joined by Isaah Mhlanga. He's the chief economist at Alexander Forbes. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon. So July CPI came out above that market consensus of 3%. What's been the underlying upward pressure on inflation?
Look, if we look at the number, it's 3.2%. It's only just slightly above consensus, but also remains on the lower target band of 3%. Electricity and other fuel prices increased roughly about 6.2% on a month-on-month. But if you look on a year-on-year basis, about 7.5% in July. You would know that electricity tariffs, they increased by 6.25% on a month-on-month basis. But also fuel prices increased 12.6% on a month-on-month, which is one of the major drivers of this uptick. But I think the important aspect that we can take from this print is it still remains quite low, but also concerns about potential deflation as we see in other countries. They are not really warranted at this point in time, which means going forward, we are likely to see a gradual uptrend in inflation, but remaining within the Reserve Bank's target band.
Okay, so that was my next question. With the easing of the lockdown restrictions, are there any inflation pressures arising?
Absolutely, there are no inflation pressures arising because you would know that there is a significant loss of employment. We also saw liquidation and insolvencies of companies numbers that were released on Monday that showed that in July there was a 5% increase year-on-year in liquidation numbers, which means we expect unemployment to continue to increase, and consensus expectations for now is a 35% unemployment rate. And that means people do not have income. But also there is a phenomenon of discretionary savings where people save whatever income they have currently and not spending it. And as a result, all we are seeing is supply side factors, nothing from a demand side.
Okay. So what's the outlook for inflation this year?
We think the bottom, we have already reached it, which means the 2.1% we saw in May was the bottom in this cycle. From where we are, we'll continue to see a gradual increase in the inflation numbers going forward, which also means that from a monetary policy point of view, we don't expect any further cuts in interest rates. They're likely to remain quite stable for the foreseeable future. But if we consider the Reserve Bank's view, which says over the next 18 months, we are likely to see inflation gradually rising, but still remaining within the SABC target, that is going to make the Reserve Bank quite conservative in such a way that they are unlikely to cut rates further, because their view is that it's not going to help growth much, but there are risks for having too low interest rates.
Isaah Mhlanga, the chief economist at Alexander Forbes, thanks so much for your time on SABC News this afternoon.